Hi, guys. This is Cliff from Cliff's List, and today my special guest is Sacha Corbieres, who is going to share some insights and some things hopefully you haven't heard before about how to have success with women, as well as his story about how he got into helping guys and the successes that he's had. I think you're gonna learn some very interesting things today. So, Sacha, we'll start off with give people an kind of a opening discussion that to tell people a little bit about yourself who haven't heard about you before.
Yeah, thank you. By the way, you pronounce my name really well, which is unusual because people don't know how to pronounce it, especially my surname. It's a French surname, so usually the American people or English people, they have a hard time. But congratulations, you did it.
Well, I'm in
So,
I'm in I'm in Montreal, Quebec, so French is a little bit more
ah,
common over here.
so a little bit about me. I mean, it's pretty much the typical story that you hear from like dating coaches, where they start out like introvert, shy. I was being bullied in school. I had like I wouldn't say like the roughest childhood, but from like 0 to 12 years old, I was living in a ghetto in south of France. When I was born, my parents were unemployed, and basically I was, you know, I went through certain things in my life that led me to um, experience some forms of suffering. Let's put it like this. And when it comes down to women, uh, it was an area that I just couldn't understand at all. And it's interesting because now when I'm putting out YouTube videos, or when I write in my Facebook page, people think I'm natural, because I look pretty okay. I speak in a very confident way and stuff like that. So it's funny because I take it as a compliment. But if they would have talked to me a few years ago, I'm talking like 8 to 10 years ago, I was a very, very different kind of person. And basically, I lost my virginity when I was 19. Uh, she rejected me right after the sex because I gave her like a terrible sexual experience. Couldn't last very, very long. And it was until when I got to 2021 that I discovered game, like the whole thing. And I remember I was living in Buenos Aires back then. I was a student, and I was watching some videos, and I was watching this guy approaching girls in the street, and I was blown away by this. I was like, wow, this is crazy. And I even had a hard time believing if it's actually possible. And I remember in Buenos Aires, I tried for a little bit, 2 weeks, and I did like 20 approach in 2 weeks. Got rejected 19 times. I only had one number, but this number led to nothing, and then I abandoned. And it's only a year later when I moved to Prague, in Czech Republic, for the people that don't know, that I really started to work on this. And I mean, that's a whole journey in itself. But I was extremely introvert, and just to give you a bit of a perspective on this, most of my friends at uni, they were able to drink alcohol and then they could talk to a woman. I could not do that. Even if I was drunk, I still felt a lot of anxiety. I still couldn't move my feet towards a woman and walk and actually talk. So I was forced to learn that. I was really forced.
That's very interesting. That alcohol didn't help you, which is a lot of people that's their confidence in a bottle. Um,
I wish. I wish it could have helped me, but it wasn't at all.
and very, very introverted. I definitely want you to go into some detail about how you uh, dealt with it, either converted it or just managed to use it
Yeah.
as strength.
Yeah. Yeah. This it's funny that I love that you say this because whenever I meet my family that basically knew me from very young, they said now being introverted is a quality. But back then, I was a slave to it, because I had a burning desire to connect with people. Because I had periods of my life where I had no friends. I was playing video games and all of that. So I had really a burning desire to connect, and especially with women. So what I did, and this is a, you know, I was very lucky, to be honest, because sometimes, I mean, when I look back at my life, there are instances that just don't make much sense. It's a lot of luck, and I'm very grateful it happened. But basically, when I moved to Prague, I was working in a company as a salesman. I knew no one in Prague, absolutely no one. I had no friends. I was 21, and most of the people in my company were old people. So I couldn't really relate with them. They were not going outside. So basically, I wrote in a forum, in a French forum, because I didn't know about RSD back then or any of that. I just knew about the French community, and out of nowhere, there's this one guy that reached out to me and say, I know someone in Prague, should connect with him. And funny enough, this person became my mentor. And when I met him in Prague the first time, then this is, by the way, a Chilean guy. He was a natural guy, but he was, so in centimeters, because I don't know in feet, but 165 centimeters. So like really small guy, for the black people here. Like 165, but incredible results with women, like so good. And I came up to him, and at the time I was actually a bit of a feminist, so I didn't know too much about the alpha kind of thing, and because my mom was a feminist, I grew up in this kind of environment. And I remember he started to talk to me about the dynamic, the like being dominant with women, being super sexual with girls and all of that. And I was looking at him and feeling shocked by what he was telling me, very, very shocked. But at the time, I was so desperate because I wanted to meet women. I wanted to, you know, get myself out of this fucking situation. So I just shut my mouth and I listened to him. And he became my first mentor, actually. I was helping him. He was, because he lacked motivation to go outside, and I was so motivated. And he was giving me insights on how to seduce girls and all of that. And basically, that's how I started to get out of being this introvert, really shy, super close, like, I didn't know how to interact with people, to literally going out every single day. And at the beginning, I was meeting around 10 to 20 women every day. And there was never a day I was missing. Every day, 10 to 20 women, depending on how much work I had in my company, but always 10 to 20 women. And I did this for 3 years straight, like nonstop. Never had a date where I was missing. Even when I was traveling, like if I would take a plane, I would meet women at the airport, in the plane, anywhere. So it's a pretty radical way to get out of introversion. It worked for me. That I don't think it works for everyone, because it is this extreme that most people could not do it. It's kind of a nasty way to do it, but it worked for me.
So you just basically pushed yourself out of it.
Yeah,
It sounds like.
yeah. I mean, there was so much pain being alone in a city where I knew no one, absolutely no one, and I was 21, burning this out, like so much sexual energy, like so much. So I had no choice. It was
What did
either
your
this. Yeah.
what did your mentor tell you to do to get out of it, if anything, at that time?
I mean, a few things. Actually, there's one thing that has really, really helped me, actually. This was the first day we were outside, and he said, "I will never tell you who you should meet. Never. You are the one that knows your type, and I will never tell you to approach this woman or this woman." And I'm very, very lucky to have had him telling me this, because I know a lot of dating coaches that are pushing their clients, like, go approach this one, go approach this one. He never did this with me, because he really put me on the spot. He's like, I will not push you in any ways. You're going to have to do it by yourself. Even though I'm by your side, I'm here, but I will not tell you what you should or should not do. So this was very scary for me because I thought he would push me. I wanted him to push me, but he's like, no, I will not. And so I pushed myself to start meeting women. And really, what he taught me, this first mentor, this Chilean guy, Federico, his name, is really how to. He was calling it like you have to eat her, you have to dance her. So basically, he kind of taught me like the masculine, feminine polarity, seduction, this kind of dynamic. Because when I first started to meet women, I was a very nice guy, very platonic, and even if I would get a number and even a date, there was absolutely no way I would have sex with any woman that I would grab like numbers and all of that, because they really thought I was going to become friends with them, which was very depressive at the time. But that's because I was not polarizing. I was just a nice guy being nice. And the crazy thing is, I was giving compliments, but even giving compliments to this woman, they didn't see it as like I'm trying to date them, because my whole vibe was just way too nice, not attractive, not confident, and all of that. So yeah.
So how did you change that? I mean, that's obviously. Did you know at the time that was the issues, or you just couldn't figure out what was the problem?
I mean, at one point, I was like, I remember 8 years ago when I started to go out every day, I was having a date every single day. And none of these dates ended up with sex. None. So clearly, I could see there was a problem. And my mentor at the time, he said, um, he said what I just said. You're too nice. You're not challenging the woman. You're not eating them. He was always telling me, you're not eating them. You have to eat them. You have to play with them. You have to dance with them. So it's interesting because most people in this stage, they fall into the technical game, which I have fallen into, and I have learned, but later. But in that specific stage, what he taught me is to, which is very interesting. He taught me to become very present in the moment, to relax, and to tap into this like kind of like energy. I call it like the inner seducer that you have within yourself, this inner energy that is very connected to the sexual energy in a way, where you basically express yourself from your sexual energy, where you talk from the horniness that you experience in front of a woman. So he really taught me like relax your nervous system, because I was extremely anxious when I was starting to meet women. So I learned how to relax my nervous system, relax my body language, because a lot of the time when I was talking, I was touching my face, like, speaking too fast, just terrible way of expressing myself. And then I learned to start to kind of like eat women when I'm in front of them, with my eye contact, with the way I express myself, even like the proximity, like when I'm talking, what I started to do is, when I talk to a woman, I would try to talk to her as close as possible. Of course, if she freaks out a little bit, then she can back off and I will not do anything. But I was really trying to play with this, to take more risk, to lead more, to do crazy moves. This was the time where every time I would have a date, I would grab the hand of of my date, and I would try to pull her in to my home instantly, And 95% of the time it didn't work, but I wanted to push the limits. I wanted to really like uh, expand the edge, if that's an expression that we can say. And I got rejected a lot, but I started to have sexual experiences. Started to happen, right? Now I started to deal with a different kind of problems when I started to have sex. But yeah, I was starting to become this kind of person that is confident and attractive, even though it was very try hard at that time, not really natural.
And was there anything in particular that was going through your head that made a difference in terms of pulling you out of what you were doing and becoming more aggressive?
Mm. Hmm. I mean, at the time, because this is 8 years ago, you know, at the time, what the only thing that I had in my mind was I wanted to have sex. Like this was like it was. I was very focused on this. Now looking back, I mean, I don't want to judge it because I think it was very necessary to be in that stage in my life. Of course, now I have evolved out of this, and I'm not so much. I mean, I have a relationship right now, so I'm not so much interested in having tons of sex. I had that already. But at the time, my main focus, like this was the only thing I had in my mind, was to have sex. I was very focused on that. And probably that's why it backfired a lot, because I was sometime needy, very pushy. But it's interesting because some women liked it, that I was very pushy, that I was going for it no matter what. I was very unapologetic about it, and it worked sometimes. Now, it worked because I was approaching 10 to 20 women every day. I was having a date every single day. So quantity, of course it's going to work with some women, but 95% of the time it was not working. But I needed this at the time because I was coming from this place of suffering, depressed, very lonely, frustrated, super shy. And this was my way. This was my way out. Very uncalibrated, but this was my way, and it worked. It worked. I don't think it would work for everyone. You can try it out. Like for those that are listening, you can try that out. Like you can go from one extreme to the other, but you will find yourself in some traps probably doing this,
There's a,
which is okay.
there's a progression
Yeah,
that it sounds like it didn't take you long to go through from the progression of just approaching to getting the date,
yeah,
because that one is, I've seen a lot of guys who will approach a lot of women and get very, very little results.
yeah,
They're approach machines. They're tremendous, and
yeah.
they're not really, there's nothing really terrible about what they're doing, but they're obviously, there's
Hmm.
something that just isn't clicking, and
Yeah,
they get a number here and there, but it's like nowhere near, would they be getting a date every day the way you're describing. So
yeah.
what do you think was that first thing that started to work as far as just getting the date itself?
So
And then
yeah,
you'll talk to me about taking the date from
yeah,
the asexual to the sexual.
yeah. Okay, so this is a good point what you're saying, because it's true that for me, I mean, I had a 1 month period where I was not getting any results, but because I was not really stagnant at the time. If something was not working, I was changing it right away. I was not waiting, like I was just very active. But for me, the one thing that really, really worked is what I said actually, is to learn how to relax when I'm in front of a woman. Because the interesting thing is, because I was so anxious, because of fear of getting rejected. Um, Maybe I also had a fear of like, oh, what if they judge me? They are the people, because I was mostly doing at the beginning. I was mostly doing in the street in Europe. If you've been to Europe, I'm sure. It's amazing for the streets. Like going outside in the street is amazing. So this is what I did. So I was dealing with all these fears, and of course, if I would meet a woman from this anxiety, she would feel it, because there is this. I think I don't know who came up with this. I've learned it from RSD, the law of state transference. Whatever you feel, she will feel. So basically, um, because I was anxious, she was feeling that, and for a woman, if she feels that from a guy, she will not feel any attraction. She will not want to continue talking, and she will want to eject. So that's why I got rejected a lot. But I realized that it's not. I need to find a way to relax. So basically, that's when I got into some forms of meditation. So more like active meditation. Even though I was practicing 25 minutes of meditation every day, where I was just observing my breath, observing my thoughts, my emotions, and stuff like that. But also, what I was doing when I was outside, because that's one thing to practice at home. It's another thing when you're outside. When I was outside, I was also practicing some forms of meditation. And at the time, I read a book from a French author called Mathieu Ricard. He's a Buddhist, basically, and he wrote about, you know, compassion, love, and Buddhism, of course. And I read a book called Meditation from Mathieu Ricard. And one of the practice that there's many practices in this book. One of them was to feel your feet. So this is super simple. Feel your feet as you walk, and just really feel the sensation of the palm, the toes touching the ground, and you just become absolutely focused with the sensation of your feet touching the ground. So I started to play with that. Every time I would go outside, I would walk with with my focus on my feet the whole time. And interestingly enough, when I started to do this, I became way less anxious, much more present in the moment. And that's when I started to have some interaction where women would feel attracted to me just because I said hello. And this was a really, really weird experience for me at the time, because I felt like I cracked the code, but at the same time, it was so new, so I didn't know what to do with it so much. But when I started to really relax, it's interesting because I had a hard time finding things to say when I was in my head, like feeling anxious and all of that. When I relaxed, this problem wasn't there anymore. I would relax and I wouldn't need to talk so much. I wouldn't need to like try to attract her. I would just try to connect with her, get to know her. I mean, ask for the logistic and all of this, but I was just like super chill talking to her. And that's when I started to have more and more results, like higher quality numbers that led to dates. And I mean, we can talk about the date later, but really that's when I started to have numbers where women were like, okay, this guy is into me, he seems interesting, huh, let's see what's going to happen if I show up on the date. And I started to have good dates with really beautiful women that, I mean, at the time they felt outside of my league completely, because I couldn't believe that a beautiful woman would be showing up on a date. So every time I would have a date, I would be very anxious and all of that. But it was amazing to be able to get numbers just because I was able to really properly relax my nervous system, my entire body, and express myself from that. Right. So this was a shift, massive shift for me.
Well, that's good. Now, I've always felt that, if you relax, she'll relax. That's definitely been one of my things that I've always told myself.
Yeah.
Now, from the relaxation though, what was there something that you did in addition that changed the way you were behaving in order to get the results itself? Like you're now you're relaxed, you're talking to them, and now you're maybe getting their numbers, you're getting a date set up. Was there something now that you're doing differently on the date that was getting you the results?
Uh, like results, what do you mean with like having sexual experiences?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or
I
becoming more
mean,
intimate, I guess, is the other way to look at it.
becoming more what? Sorry?
Intimate.
Intimate. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, what I'm going to share right now is what I did back then. Doesn't mean that I would teach this now. In a way, yes. In a way, no. But this is what I did back then. Um, After like learning about relaxation and all of that, the second thing that I understood is that when I would have a date, I would be too much of a nice guy. Like I had a big problem. Like I was a big people pleaser. So you know, my vibe was not really dominant. I was just this very 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 gentle, very soft kind of person. And obviously, when you're in Prague, Czech Republic, 8 years ago, women are, I mean, I think still to this day they are, but maybe a little less because of the woke movement and all of that. But they were very feminine at the time. So I would show up on a date being too nice, and obviously there was no polarity. There was nothing going on really. So that's when I started to kind of get really interested in what masculinity is, being the alpha, this kind of stuff. So the first thing that I started to practice was leading, just leading. So, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, um, one of the first things that I was doing when I would have a date is to grab her hand, just like grab her hand and then bring her somewhere. So at the time, I was trying to bring her home. It actually worked one time, and I had sex just because I said, let's go home, and she said yes. But that was very random, very lucky. Most of the women, they were against it, of course. And then I was like, okay, so let's go to a bar. And in the bar, I was leading also. I was leading the conversation. I was trying to make moves on her, touching her thighs, brushing her hair. I was doing all these things, even though my entire body was like, this is too scary. This is fucking crazy. I don't know if I can do that, blah, blah, blah. But I was just not listening to this. I was just like, okay, I'm just going to go for what I want unapologetically in a very wild way, right? Like they were, I mean, this is a bit controversial and, uh, some people might say that it's not cool to do that, but a lot of the times, as we would go to the bar, I would grab the woman and try to kiss her like this out of nowhere. There was no escalation, nothing. It was completely, you know, uh, like this untamed wild person. This was me coming out, right? Like this. And that's when I started to have sexual experiences, actually. That's when like, not every week, probably like every 2 weeks, something like this. But I was starting to have some forms of sexual experiences just because I was leading and going for what I want. And obviously, I mean, I was feeling very sexual with this woman. So I was expressing my sexuality in this very uncalibrated way. It was very uncalibrated. But with some women, it worked, funny enough. So yeah, that's
Well,
kind of,
that's
yeah.
pretty interesting. I mean, obviously, today a lot of guys are afraid of being accused of sexual harassment.
Yeah.
Um, Women complain that men aren't men, and then when some of them are, they complain that they're harassing them. So
Yeah.
it's a and I think the reality though is it's the old story. It's that the women, when you're a guy that they're interested in, then you're a the knight in shining armor. But if you're one of the guys that falls into probably the majority of men to most women that they're not interested, that's when you're just the beast,
Hmm.
and you're doing
Yeah.
inappropriate things. So like they kind of have it going both ways, and it's kind of a difficult thing for a guy to manage, especially if he's not he's want to go through this period where he's going to a lot of it. In my way of thinking, I think that guys may start off as being in the category of an uninteresting man, and if they get their behavior together, then they become a guy that they're interested in. And I think that transition is very important for most guys, because otherwise a lot of guys are going to try something that works for a successful guy and it won't work for them.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah, you have to find your own way with this. Uh, for me at the time, I played with this, and definitely some woman could have accused me of harassment, and they would be right. It was very uncalibrated what I did. Um, but for me, it was the reason why I did this. It's not really. I mean, of course, I was interested in the results, but for me, it was more of like, fuck being a nice guy. It was more coming from this place. I was just so tired of it, of being this kind of person, because it didn't felt like me. So I went to the other extreme, which was not me, you know, because I have a good heart. I am empathetic, but at the time I just said fuck that. tired of being too much of this, so I'm going to be none of this, right? And to be fully honest, I did this for maybe 1 month and then I stopped because obviously it got me like a few results, but not like the consistent results that I was looking for. But it was kind of like a fuck you to being a nice guy. You know, I was like, I'm never going to be this again. Fuck this shit. Um, but yeah, you take it like for the people that are watching, take it with a grain of salt, this one, because it's not for everyone. It was my way, you know, but it was more coming from like the personal development that I did this.
So what was the next step for you?
Mm, well, there's actually, so because, yeah, this is an interesting one. So one thing that I didn't mention is that for me, um, when I started to have sex with women, I was dealing with erectile dysfunction, so I couldn't get it up. And if I would get it up, miraculously, I would deal with premature ejaculation. And I'm talking like as soon as I'm inside, I'm coming, right? Talking like 2, 3, 5 seconds. That kind of premature ejaculation. It was really bad. It was coming from excessive porn addiction. like, and I basically trained my body to ejaculate quick, because back when I was a kid, uh, there was always the chance that my parents would go in my room. So I had to do it quick. I was very stressed when I was doing it. It was a terrible way of first like learning about my sexuality. So at the time when I started to have these results, like being so dominant, so a leader, I was dealing with constant rejection every time I would have sex. Meaning, like, every time I had sex, I would not hear from any woman, like literally. So this was a really, really painful experience, and it kind of led me to start learning about my sexual energy. So I got really interested into Tantra, into Taoism. I started to read the book, The Multi-Orgasmic Man by Mantak Chia. I also became really, really interested in BDSM, the dynamic between dominance and submissiveness. That's when I understood that when I was like forcing this being a leader and dominance, I was not really dominant. I was not really dominant. I was domineering, right? Which is it's two different kind of energy. Dominance is coming from the place of kind of like you don't have to do it. It is you. Whereas domineering is more try hard. It's coming from insecurity. It's coming from maybe fear. So that's when I understood these two big differences of like I'm actually being domineering when I'm forcing this, and I need to stop forcing that much, right? So I learned more and more about my sexual energy. I started to do some of the practice that Mantak Chia was teaching. I got really interested in the dynamic between dominance and submissiveness. So I understood that the dynamic between a man and woman is not just me forcing to be this alpha guy. I have to embody that without forcing it, right? And so of course I started to kind of integrate all these different aspects of myself. Like, okay, I can be a leader, but I can also be empathetic. I can calibrate sometime. I don't have to force this. And that's kind of when it started to kind of like explode for me. And I started to have consistent results every week. Like I'm talking like at least one sexual experience every week with a new woman, at least. And this was like the first year of doing game. Like, you know, it was really, really fast. And and then I got into a relationship. So this changed everything in so many ways. But yeah, this was really the big shift for me to kind of learn about my sexuality and learn the dynamic male female from a dominant submissiveness point of view, uh, without trying so hard, without forcing all of that. And this has been transformational. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about what you do for guys now to get
Mhm.
them over there. I'm sure that you probably, I don't know, I don't I don't know how many different starting points there are. I think in a lot of ways, a lot of us have the same starting points, but
Yeah.
uh, I think that there's probably a variety, and I'm just curious about how you deal with the various problems that guys come to you with, and you know, coach them to overcome these things. You're going to have one guy who's maybe he's extroverted, but he's just not getting anywhere. You'll have another guy who's introverted, and he's just too quiet and too shy. You got certain different uh, challenges that each person
Hmm.
has.
Hmm.
What and because some of these are probably not the same challenges that you had. I guess I'm curious how
Yeah.
you coach these guys, what kind of advice you give them, and this type of thing.
Yeah. 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 I mean, what I teach right now is very, very different to what I did back then. You know, that's why I'm saying, like, if I would come back to these years with the wisdom I have now, I probably wouldn't do it this way. But back then, I didn't have that kind of wisdom, and so I did it this way. But right now, there's really like three areas that I focus on in my when someone comes to me, um, because mm, first of all, I do want to simplify the process of being able to attract a woman and have a date and then have sex. I don't think it should be that complicated. And I think if you saw some of my posts on Facebook or some of the videos I teach on my YouTube, I'm not really the kind of person that focus on the technical aspect to meet and date women. I'm more the kind of person that is really into, in very general sense, becoming a better version of yourself that is more confident, attractive, masculine, so that you can naturally attract a woman. So the way I do this is is very simple. There's really just three kind of areas that you need to work on. On one side, you want to work on your sexuality, because I mean, if you're here to meet women, is probably to have some intimate experiences. So you better focus on your sexuality, and actually embody it, own it, kind of like that, you know. So that's one aspect of the work that I do. The second aspect of the work that I do is more like the masculine feminine polarity. So really understanding how you can become a man, and by becoming a man you will start to meet women that will fall into their feminine and be much more soft with you, much more loving, submissive, and all of that. And there are certain practices that you can do to become more masculine, right? And the last aspect that I teach to my clients is the internal work, the inner work, basically. And with this is actually, I would say, the main focus. Like at the moment, pretty much all my clients are interested in doing the inner work. The reason why is because a lot of people have issues that are internal, and they try to solve it by externally doing something. So let's take an example. Um, you have approach anxiety, right? So if you look at the dating community right now, the way to overcome approach anxiety is what? 3 second rule. Uh, Approach every day, and then the approach anxiety will go away. Maybe focus on like meditating, relax. That's kind of what I did, you know, and eventually it will go away. In my experience, these things can work because it has worked for me. I mean, I was going out every day. I practiced the 3 second rule. I was meditating. There's probably more to that, but it worked. But then every time I would stop meeting women, the approach anxiety would come back. So it was kind of frustrating for me. So right now, when when someone comes to me to work, what we do, instead of ignore, like not it's not ignoring the problem, it's more like avoiding the problem by doing something else, right? So the problem is approach anxiety, which is an internal experience. The anxiety is within you, it's not outside of you, it's within yourself, right? It's caused by something outside of yourself, but it's happening within yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
instead of using an external tool like 3 second rule, whatever it is, What we do is we deal with the issue itself, we deal with the anxiety itself. So what we do with my clients is we kind of go internally, not even kind, we go internally, and we try to identify the root of why the anxiety is here in the first place. Because interestingly enough, and I'm sure I mean, with your experience, I'm sure you've met people that don't have so much social anxiety. I know I have one uncle. He's wizard when it comes to social interactions, but he's naturally extroverted. But for him, talking to a stranger brings absolutely no anxiety. His whole life was like this. But for some other people like us, the idea of talking to a woman or to a stranger in a restaurant or in a bar brings a bit of anxiety, right? So when you start working with this internally and actually dealing with the root cause, especially, and healing that. Interestingly enough, you start experiencing less and less and less anxiety. And of course, it's not just doing the internal work and sitting at home and doing nothing. You have to expose yourself as well and go outside. But the combination of doing internal work and external work is really, like, for me, has worked really, really well with myself and with my clients as well. So really, like, the backbone of my teaching is this: combining the internal work with the external, right? And you can do that with pretty much everything. Like, every single issue that you have with women, you can go internally, and then your external reality will change like this, with the adequate action, of course.
You had said that the second step was sort of helping them become more masculine. Maybe you could go into
Yeah,
a little more detail about that.
yeah. I mean, in terms of masculine, okay, so I need to. Uh,
I'm
there's a
thinking.
few.
I'm thinking in
Yeah,
terms of how you coach the guys with it.
yeah, yeah. So there's a few pillars that we need to understand, uh, when it comes down to embodying your masculinity. And actually, very recently, I had a client of mine, a new client that joined my mentoring, and he came because of this, because he feels like he's not masculine. And it's funny because literally today I was thinking, like, how can I tell him, how can it looks like to be a masculine man. And this is the image that popped for me. When you have truly embodied your masculinity, when you have your woman next to you and you could kill for her. You could literally kill for her, and she could feel that you're ready to kill. That's really the essence of being a masculine man, in my own definition. Okay, maybe some people don't see it this way, but for me, when you start embodying this kind of energy where you almost ready to kill for that woman, because you have this kind of like killer instinct, that's when women start to feel deeply attracted to you. When you become almost like kind of like dangerous, but a contained dangerous, not dangerous in the sense that you're going to do stupid things, more like you're aware that you're very strong, that you're very dangerous, but you contain that, in a very calibrated, like, conscious way. So in terms of, like, to come back to the pillars, I think you need to be a leader. That's very important. So you need to be leading without trying hard, meaning, like, you're leading very naturally in a relaxed way, and your woman is following you because you're so certain of yourself that she has kind of no other choice, but you're not forcing that. Also, boundaries, right? So for the nice guys here, like, if you have a trouble expressing your boundaries on a date, or just expressing your needs, all of that, that's a clear sign that you lack masculinity here. Like, you need to be able to express your boundaries, to be almost like confrontational sometime, to be like, I don't like this. I remember a few years ago, I had a date with a woman, and she was using her telephone on the date. And I told her, like, why are you using your telephone? I'm not using my telephone right now. And she's like, oh yeah, I'm texting with my mom, blah blah blah. And I'm like, okay, I understand, but I don't want you to text. Like, I'm sharing my energy with you, my time. I want us to be present together. She continued texting, and I literally left the bar. That was it. I didn't want to continue that. You want to have this level of boundaries where, of course, you want to be compassionate and express it in a very relaxed, calm, with an open heart. But if she keeps on crossing your boundaries, what are you doing? You know, wake the fuck up and stand up for yourself. Very important to have boundaries. So you have leadership, uh, boundaries. I think there is an aspect of being strong, but not just physically. So I think every man should go to the gym or at least do something with their body. That's very important. But also being strong mentally, being strong with your emotions, right? And what I mean with being strong with your emotions is that even if you get triggered, you're able to stay grounded, right? Because women, I mean, if any of you that are watching right now have been in a relationship, you know that women will trigger the fuck out of you when you're in a relationship. At least in my experience and my clients' experience as well, we get triggered sometimes. But for a man that has embodies his masculine, he's able to be grounded in that moment. Not always, you don't have to be perfect, but most of the time he's able to stay grounded, even though like there's the urge to say something stupid or hurtful, right? So I think having control over your emotions, being mentally strong, disciplined, and physically strong as well is really important. I also recommend to all my clients to either go to the gym or practice a martial art. I used to practice martial art. I don't do this anymore. Now I just go to the gym, and it's very important. Like, these are things that will make you more attractive with women, even though it's not really connected with women. So of course, don't go to the gym because you want to be more cool with women. You do it for yourself always, but you need to understand that this will have an impact. I remember as soon as I started to go to the gym, I mean, first of all, my level of testosterone, like, risen like crazy, and I was much more impactful in the way I was expressing myself, much more, and probably because of the higher level of testosterone as well. But I remember, like, I was able to create more attraction because my very presence was more powerful in that sense. So I could talk and talk about this, but that's kind of like the long story short of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, well, what about some of the other elements that men face today in terms of dealing with women? For example, there's the difference between day game and night game, and there's online game. Maybe you
Hmm.
want to go into some of the various modalities, I guess, that men face when
Yeah.
they're dealing with women today.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna be fully transparent here. I don't have so much experience with online game. Uh, most of my results came from day game and night game. Uh, I did have results with online game in Colombia, but being being a white guy like me in Colombia is such an advantage. So I don't think anyone should take advice from me in terms of online game, because I just had results in Colombia, but I mean, I had to do nothing to get results in Colombia.
Well,
So
don't you feel that even with the women that you might meet here, you've got to text them, you've got to
oh yeah, yeah.
communicate with
I
them.
mean, yeah,
This type of thing. I
texting.
think this is there's a bit of an art to that and a science to that, I think, too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, texting, yes. I was talking about really Tinder and all of that. Like, I don't deal with this. I don't do that. So the question is, what guys are dealing with, right? What kind of problems they're dealing with?
Well, yeah, in the different sectors, do you show them different
Yeah.
things to do? Like
Yeah.
for example, difference between night game and day game is one place we could start.
Okay. Um, mm, I think night game. if we look at night game, there is a bigger element of being a social wizard, in the sense that most of the people that go to the nightclubs or the bars, they usually come with friends, right? So the way you approach night game is obviously a little bit different, in a sense that you probably will have to deal with friends at some point. Whereas day game, you can pretty much be kind of like a sniper and go to one woman and then easily have a date with her, like an instant date. And then if it's possible, potentially have sex with her if that's what you feel, right? So I think the main difference between day game and night game is really this element of uh, being kind of almost like being more socially intelligent, because you're going to have to deal with this kind of like group situations, and also potentially moving from one club to the other. I mean, depending on which country you are. I know in Prague there was a lot of this, like these groups of girls that would go to one club and then another club, and so you have all of this different kind of situation. So the same principles apply, meaning that, like I said, if you embody your sexuality, if you're truly masculine, if you do the internal work, you can express yourself this way with a woman, and it should be very natural to attract her. But the difference is, with the night game, you have to be socially, at least a little bit more socially intelligent, to deal with the different kind of dynamics that are happening. Whereas with night game, I mean, of course, with day game, you might approach some groups, but I think most of the time guys are approaching uh, single girls, like just alone, or maybe one girl and another girl. So that's a much easier dynamic. So this was for me the like I mean, I don't do day game anymore. Night game, I have a relationship right now, so I'm talking about the past, like a few years ago. But um this was the difference for me, at least. Night game was really, I had to be a little bit more socially intelligent to deal with, a friend that is not happy that I'm talking to her friend, all these kind of things. Um, Personally, I always prefer to do like day game in the street or in the malls. Uh, Partly because I'm in Europe, so it's just so amazing. So I attract mostly people that are doing day game. Uh, though I do attract people that do night game and online game, but mostly like I attract people that do day game. So this is really my expertise, I would say.
What what are some of the various issues which might be a little bit different than just you know, approach anxiety or something? Just what are the different issues that you come across with your clients? Like, what do they come
Yeah.
to you with, the different challenges?
Mm, well, right now I'm my clients are not really guys that have approach anxiety. They're usually guys that have a bit more experience, meaning that they're able to take action. They can have sometimes dates and stuff like that. The main issue that I find in most guys is that they don't feel good enough uh, when they see a really attractive woman. Because it's one thing to talk to an average looking woman, uh, might not feel that anxious and all of that. But if you talk to like a stunner, like a proper beautiful model kind of woman, right? That's a whole different kind of story. And so a lot of the men that come to me, they understand that there could be some issues with attracting this kind of woman, and it's usually coming down from the place of not feeling good enough, not feeling worthy. uh, and usually the kind of story that happens is like, oh, she's outside of my league, there is no way she likes a guy like me. So this is the most common issue that I see men experiencing, and it can manifest in so many different ways, right? Like, for example, approach anxiety can be coming from a place of not feeling good enough, because you see that very beautiful woman, and because you don't feel good enough, you start feeling that. right? But then it can also manifest as like being needy, right? So you're talking to a beautiful woman, but you're seeking her validation. You want her to like you so badly, right? So you start acting in a really weird way for her, right? Um, and obviously it turns her off. Because the interesting thing that I've experienced in my life, in my dating life, is that whenever I talk to a really, really, really beautiful woman, I really just had to chill out, to just chill the fuck out and not try anything like so crazy, just chill the fuck out. Obviously, express my sexual intent, but just not trying to get her, just enjoying the conversation. And this might sound super easy, but when you're in front of a very beautiful woman, a proper beautiful woman, that's a whole different story. Knowing how to chill out when there's that stunner in front of you, that's a whole different story. And I think everyone can relate with this. But if you can really get to that place where you chill out, relax completely in front of a stunner, and you're still playful, of course, you're still flirty, but not from neediness, not from trying to get her, you're just enjoying her, right? From that place. That's when things change like crazy. So yeah, that's really like, and I keep on talking about this in my posts, in my YouTube videos, not feeling good enough. This is I would say the biggest issue men are facing nowadays, at least from the people I attract, the people that are watching me, right? I'm not sure if that's all the men, but at least in my word, that's kind of how I see.
You see different variations of how that manifests itself, so that some guys, they don't feel they're worthy for one reason, others for a different reason. And do you have various ways of helping them over that, or is it really just mostly just get him to relax and
I
to
mean, the not feeling good enough is an internal issue, right? There's a story behind that, right? Because if we look at it logically, uh, like really logically, from even like a kind of like a stupid eye, I don't know if we can say that, but if we look at it from this perspective, there's no reasons to not feel good enough, you know. Sorry, there's no reasons to feel like unworthy in front of a beautiful woman, because every man has something to offer, unless he's like playing video games all the time and doing nothing with his life and all of that. Sure, that's a whole different thing. But every man has something to offer to a woman, and to a beautiful woman as well. Yet internally there is something happening that makes them believe that they cannot attract this kind of woman, because they saw that this kind of woman only date such guys. But if you ever been to Eastern Europe, this is a very interesting phenomena here in Poland, Czech Republic, Ukraine, Russia. If you walk in the street here, sometime you see a really ugly guy, like but douchey kind of guy, very masculine, but very ugly guy with a fucking stunner, like crazy, like so beautiful woman. And you look at this and you're like, why not me? you know like this dork, why not me? So I remember when I came to Prague and I was seeing this thing happening right in front of my eyes. I was like, okay, if this guy can do it, I probably can as well. you know I don't know if it's like this in the US or Canada, but for me, I had the experience like right in front of my eyes. So I was like, okay, if he's doing it, I probably can. There must be something, because that dude was broke, like zero social status, shit look, yet he was able to pull out a crazy attractive woman, So there must have been something. And usually this kind of guys, they're like super douchey, super attractive, super dominant, very, very masculine, not caring about her approval at all, completely unplugged from her validation, and relaxed, very relaxed. And interestingly enough, very attractive women are attracted to this. So the way we deal with the not feeling good enough, to come back to this, is that we go internally and we kind of identify when was the first time you started to tell yourself that you're not good enough, you know. And usually there's a very specific experience that happened to you in your childhood, that made you believe that you were not good enough. So sometime it can be bullying, sometime it can be like the first time you try to seduce a woman and she rejects you, so then you internalize like, oh, I'm not good enough. Maybe some people were laughing at you when you try to seduce her and get rejected. Or it can simply come from your mother, right? The way she educated you was such a way that she made you believe that you aren't good enough, and that's usually the root for a lot of guys. It's called like a mother wound. It's where, basically the way your mother educated you kind of shaped you in such a way that you don't feel good enough with women. And then it manifests like this as you uh go outside, meet women, have dates, and all of that. So yeah.
Okay, well, I guess I wanted to learn more about, uh, you know, now that you're going on to relationships here. You've
Yeah.
I don't know. Is this you? I know you mentioned you're in a relationship. Is this your first real relationship, or uh, or is it something that it's a result of sort of a series of ones that you got into? Uh,
Yeah, I had two relationships in the past. Yeah, my first relationship was a disaster, complete disaster. I was very toxic. She was very toxic. We cheated on each other. Like, it was really bad. Uh, Second relationship was a bit better, but still toxic in some ways. I think I wasn't ready for a relationship at that time. And now this is the most serious relationship I have been in. It's been a year and a half that we're together. Um, we are monogamous, so it means that I'm not meeting any woman or any of that. And came from me, not from her. Like, I came to a place in my life where I felt no interest to pursue women the way I pursued women in the past. Um, I think I've burned in yoga we say, I've burned the karma. I don't need to do this anymore, kind of. So I came to a point in my life 2 years ago, 2 3 years ago, where I was not really enjoying dating multiple women, because at the time I was having, rotation or short-term girlfriends, this kind of stuff, or tons of hookups and all of that. And it kind of became meaningless. So 2 years ago, I decided, 2 years and a half ago, I decided to go full on monk. So I became like celibate. So not like monk, but just celibate. No dating, no dating apps, no texting, none of that, no sex. And I randomly met my girlfriend at a birthday party. So not doing game, none of this. It's interesting, and we kind of connected, and now we're on a relationship, and it's very very serious. It's a whole different kind of game, to be honest. I'm not I'm learning a lot in this relationship, because it's it's one thing to attract a woman when you meet her in the street or in the bar, or all of that. It's another thing to keep a relationship healthy, fulfilling, and passionate. It's very different.
tell me what you
And
tell me what you've
yeah,
learned about women from relationships, and then tell me what you've
yeah.
learned about relationships from relationships.
Well, I learned. I think part of the success that I had with women came from the fact that I jumped into a relationship, my first relationship, because I learned so much about women uh, in that first relationship. I understood how a woman is really, like the different menstrual phases that she's going through, the different hormonal changes, her moods, and all of these things that at the time when I was doing pickup, I was not aware of this. So in that first relationship, I started to kind of take less things personally. If a woman rejects me, maybe it's not my thing. Maybe she was just in her PMS and she had no mood. So I remember like rejection didn't hurt me that much after that first relationship, because I had a really deep understanding of what a woman is like, what is her experience of being a woman. So definitely a relationship has helped me a lot with that. Um, when it comes down to relationship itself, um, I'm still learning. I'm not talking from the expert point of view here, because I'm still very much learning. I haven't mastered the relationship game in any ways. I have my, you know, wisdom about it, but I'm far away from this because I'm not perfect with this, definitely. But one thing that for me has been, I mean, especially in this relationship, because in the past I wasn't like this. When you're in a relationship with a woman, you have to be absolutely honest about everything. Don't hide. Don't hide anything, even if it's the most uncomfortable, ugly kind of stuff. You are honest 100%, and that's tough. That is really tough to be honest absolutely all the time, because it's very tempting to hide a little detail. But being honest 100%, that's a whole different kind of thing. But it's very, very important to keep the relationship fulfilling. Yeah. When it comes down to the passion, because yeah, if you have a relationship that lasts for 2 3 months, yeah, you have the passion. But when it's more than a year and you live together, that's different. The passion can go away. And the one thing I learned about keeping the passion alive is that you want to treat the passion as like the fire. The fire, to stay alive, needs wood and oxygen. It's the same with the passion. If you don't take responsibility for the passion of your relationship, it will slowly diminish and then go away. And then you lose the connection, and then you're friends then. To keep the polarity, the passion going in the relationship, you have to be absolutely responsible about it, meaning that you have to take adequate actions to keep it. So, for example, um, let's say if we talk about sex in that sense, uh, what could be something that you can do in your relationship to make the sex more interesting? What could be something that you could do that would add some variety, right? I think one thing that is important in a relationship is to always be creative, to add some variety, not just with sex, with everything. Because when you live together, there's this sense of routine that can happen, and routine is great because it adds safety. You feel more connected, more close, but it kills the polarity. So you have to find a balance between the polarity and also the comfort and all that, because the comfort is good in a relationship as well, but it can kill the polarity. So you have to find the balance with that, if that makes sense.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think you've shared a lot of very interesting things today. Um,
Thank you.
when we before we started, you mentioned there were some uh, things that you thought were things other people would not heard elsewhere before. I was just curious if there was anything that you haven't mentioned that maybe you want to mention here
um
about some of your advice for guys relating
i
to
mean
having success with women.
when I think what I've shared here, especially, I think the one thing that I don't hear too much in the dating industry, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe some people talk about it, but I just don't hear about it, is so inner work. Yes, people talk about inner work, but the kind of inner work where you go internally and you deal with your insecurity and you go at the root of it. I think that's something that not a lot of dating coaches are talking about. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just not aware of it, but I haven't heard it too much. And I think this is transformational when you can heal the root of an issue that you have, which can be not feeling good enough, fear of rejection, approach anxiety, some needy behaviors, like all of these things. When you can heal the root that makes you do that, that's just absolutely it's very powerful. Yeah, like the kind of stuff where when you've worked on this, you don't have to come back to it, right? Like it's integrated. You don't have to look back or anything. You're a new person, new identity, and you can live life from this new sense of energy, right? So yeah.
Um, is there any kind of somewhat unique ways you've dealt with some of those issues that you said that maybe you haven't mentioned yet here today?
A unique way.
Yeah, well, for
Mm,
example, something a little bit like, for example, you mentioned feeling not good enough, if you're having approaching, you mentioned these as being sort of the root causes. I'm just curious if there
yeah.
were any methods that you deal with correcting those that maybe you haven't talked
Yeah,
about.
I mean, if anyone that is watching is interested in hearing the methods that I use, I haven't created it. So there's two methods that I use. The first one is called parts work. This is from so it's called IFS, Internal Family System. The founder of this is Richard C. Schwartz. So I take this method and then I use it very intuitively, right? So it's like kind of like, you take a sword, but then you can use the sword in your own way. So I do the same thing with the parts work, and this is an amazing tool to deal with this kind of issues like not feeling good enough, needy behaviors, approach anxiety, and stuff like that. Because it's kind of like you're kind of like a scientist, and you see a problem, and then you go deep into it, right? And then and you start resolving it. So that's one tool that I use that is very powerful, that everyone can learn. You have some resources there, but it's one thing to learn it, it's another thing to practice it. And another tool that I use is called attachment repairing, and that's basically because this is I want to make it very simple to understand, because I can go deep into this, but I think it's not necessary. Um, there is a very specific way that you relate with women, right? Like a very unique way, you know. And usually, this way with that you relate with women was formed in your childhood. And when we talk about attachment pairing, it's between 0 to 2 years old. So basically, every single experience that you went through between 0 and 2 years old is kind of like imprinted in your psyche. And depending on how you were raised, there's a certain kind of I don't know if it's software, like a certain software that was kind of like put in your system. I don't know if I'm explaining well this way. And basically, because of this way of your software is, you're going to interact with women in a very specific way. So let me give you an example. One of the healthy quality of a good attachment system is to feel safe um, when you get out of your comfort zone, right? So this is interesting because most people do not feel safe when they get out of their comfort zone, right? I mean, maybe not most, some people don't feel safe getting out of their comfort zone. Um, so there are certain things that you can do to increase the level of safety. So by safety, I mean like it's not such a risk let's say you never approach a woman in your life. It's not such a risk to meet her to the point that you don't have to feel so much anxiety, right? So much adrenaline because it's that risky, right? So there are certain things that you can do to increase the level of safety when you get out of your comfort zone, so that you feel confident, You don't have to play any games, pretend, or anything like this. You can just get out of your comfort zone and then come back to your comfort zone and just feel okay doing this. So that's one example of how you can use attachment repairing to actually. So this is one of the tool that I use for approach anxiety, because it really helps for the people that have a really hard time stepping out of their comfort zone. You know, it's really really hard for them. Like they so addicted to stay in their little comfort zone, not take too much action. You know, maybe play video game or whatever. So for this kind of people, this form of therapy is actually very very powerful. Yeah.
Yes, I can see that. I think you've shared a lot of good stuff today. Maybe you kind of tell the people listening or watching this to, you know, a little bit about what you offer, your services,
Yeah.
products, events, whatever you put on.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this. I mean, what I'm not gonna talk about any of my programs or anything like this. What I recommend the people that are watching to this point, still watching to this point, is they can check my YouTube channel. It's my name, Sacha Corbieres, and they can just watch my YouTube channel. They can go to my Facebook. It's my name also. Check my content. If you like what I do, you can reach out to me. Yeah, I do propose some mentoring programs. I do mostly online. I organize retreats, masculinity retreats in the mountains in summer. But other than that, yeah, that's kind of what I do. Yeah.
Well, look, I want to thank you for taking the time with me today, and I think we've covered a lot of ground, and
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing the response to your to this interview. And
Yeah.
thanks very much. And I guess hopefully we'll be doing this again sometime in the future.